This episode of the Cult and Culture Podcast is presented by Thunder Road Guitars.
Thunder Road Guitars is the Pacific Northwest's best source of premium, new, used, and vintage guitars, amplifiers, and pedals.
Online or in their Seattle and Portland shops, you'll find fantastic customer service and a terrific vibe.
Real people offering real service. Use code CULTCULTURE10 to get 10% off at www.thunderroadguitars.com.
DistroKid now also has a motherfucking app.
The DistroKid app is available for iOS and Android.
You can now get an additional 30% off if you go to distrokid.com/VIP/cult. That's distrokid.com/VIP/cult.
Or you can get it in the App Store.
Fuck. All right, we're rolling.
Rolling.
Planet B
Presents
Cult and Culture Podcast.
Welcome to episode 38 of the Cult and Culture Podcast. I'm Justin Pearson.
and I'm Luke Hinshaw.
This episode's pretty rad. It went, I knew it was going to be good, but it went really well. We had our longtime friend Nick Reinhart on the podcast, who's, I think, mostly known for Tera Melos, but he's currently now in Death Grips. He does a lot of stuff with sort of the Pinback realm of music. I think there's some collaborative things that he's been doing with some of those guys. And his solo thing, Disheveled Cuss, I get, or maybe I don't know if it's considered solo, but like his other projects, Disheveled Cuss. He's just an awesome guitar player, all around awesome person. Did pedals and effects with Juan, who was previously on one of our episodes. So it was nice to have him. It's totally part of the family, and the conversation just went awesome.
Yeah, the flow of this podcast was so dope.
Yeah, and we made that bet, the $1 billion bet, somewhere in the podcast. So yeah, pay attention to that, and then whoever wins the musical lottery, we're gonna hook each other up. So I don't know what else.
I think the podcast speaks for itself.
It really does. It's cool because he's obviously insanely technically proficient in his instrument and writing music, but we get into the morals and ethics of stuff, which I think is also as important as people's talent. I'll say talent, at least for ourselves. But I think that, always goes full circle to bands like Fugazi and stuff. But it's a really good conversation. I think.
And Corey Feldman.
I don't think we talk about Corey. Corey's not in this episode. The last two, we talked some shit about that guy, but we could talk about Corey. But anyhow, let's dive into this, and we hope you enjoy it. Thank you.
Yep.
Hi, I'm Nick Reinhart. I'm a guitar player, and I play in a lot of bands. I played in a band for 20 years called Tera Melos. My new thing is Disheveled Cuss. I play in Pinback. I play in Death Grips. I play in a band called Portugal the Man. I do a bunch of stuff. I like to do stunt guitar for different bands and stuff, and make weird sounds. So I like playing guitar, and that's about it.
You do a really good job at it. Okay, so is Tera Melos still a band?
Is Tera Melos still a band? This is crazy because that's the first time that's actually someone's asked me that. In the last time the band was active, I think was 2018, and oddly, there's been zero activity, and no one has asked me that literal question.
Well, the apocalypse happened,
right? That's true.
There's that.
Wow. So how do I answer that? Well, we made a record in San Diego. In 2016, during the election.
Oof,
Trump got elected the night we were at Singing Serpent, making a record. And then that came out in 2017. We did an album cycle and did some touring, and then that was the last time the band was active. And around that time, the bass player moved to Switzerland, Nate, and he had started a family there. And then John Clardy, the drummer, gets cancer, moves to Prague, Czech Republic, beats cancer, goes away mostly. I don't exactly know how that works, but that goes away. And now he's doing his thing, hanging out there. And then
He's still there.
Yeah, he's still there. And then
love
I
him.
start doing all this other, stuff. I'm kind of making, my plan B for my musical career or whatever. So, but that's what happened. So then there's been zero band activity since then, but I don't know if that means it's not a band anymore or what does that mean to you?
Fuck,
so
I mean,
so
well,
hearing that
the cancer thing is gnarly, and so you beat it, like whatever. Don't even talk about it. It'll just come back, Not the cancer. The band will just be a band,
Right.
right?
maybe.
Yeah. Okay, that's cool.
Well,
everything seems to be needed to be definitive for some reason.
yeah.
In the world, I don't know why.
Chris Prescott, the drummer of Pinback, last night was like, "Oh, do you think Tera Melos will ever do anything again?" That's a different question. Will we ever do anything, or is it a band? No one has explicitly said, "Is it a band?"
I see what you're saying.
So, and I'm just like, that's a different question
Yeah.
in my mind. But the way I explained it to him was, well, okay, Nate,
Hiatus.
see, what is Fugazi? I'm not trying to say,
Yeah.
I'm not comparing myself
Yeah.
to that, but is that a band still?
Yeah.
I heard this rad thing, and this might not work out monetarily, but like at some point Coachella was like trying to get them to play. Do you hear about this?
And like an insane amount of money, right?
I mean, the amount of money then was insane. It might not be that much now because there's like all these asshole billionaires, but they were offered a lot of fucking money. And Ian was like, the next time Fugazi plays, it's gonna be for free in DC. And I was like, dude, that was the fucking shit right there.
I just saw like a flyer this morning from whatever era that was like a $3 Fugazi show.
Yeah.
Like, that's crazy.
Yeah.
You saw Fugazi, I'm sure.
A bunch, yeah.
I was like right on the edge where I can remember seeing them on handbills, but I was maybe like 13 or something, and I was like, how do I get to there? Or whatever. Anyways, just to wrap up the Tera Melos thing, I think it wraps it up. I don't know.
I got another question, Tera Melos related, but we'll get there.
Okay. When Nate had a couple kids, it was like, oh, okay, so now we're in a band where someone has kids. We'd grown up doing this, so I didn't know how that works. So I do remember there was like an email thread where it was like, okay, well, so if we tour, maybe we could do like a West Coast run, maybe like, and then a little bit later we do the East Coast run. And in my head, I was like, I'm not really interested in doing that because the band is so like complex, and to get it up and running, dude, I want like 2 weeks of practice. I have so much that I like weight to carry in that band. It takes me a long time to make it right in my own head.
Wow.
And so the idea of like, all right, well, now there's like, families and dads and stuff. So lots of bands do that.
Yeah.
Obviously, you can exist that way. But this band, to exist part-time, when I'm like, oh man, this is my entire life. This band is everything I do. I don't know that it's like fair to this thing we created to just sort of like do it every once in a while or like part-time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because
Yeah.
I'm like, literally, and these guys live in Europe now.
Yeah.
So how does that physically work? It's like, I literally need 10 days to practice. Like, but I want to practice 10 times before we play one show.
And your rehearsals will have to be with them. You can't just do it. Like,
That's right. Yeah, it has to. Like Tera Melos rehearsal was always okay. We spend 4 days getting all the kinks out, playing individual songs, building a set, and then I want to play the set 2 times a day for 1 week, something like that, and like get it airtight and solid. And it just logistically does not work to do that part time. Especially with guys coming in from Europe, blah blah blah, and then also like the way. Not that this is obviously like a definitive factor, but like you're not making any money like doing 5 West Coast shows and then taking a month off and then doing the East Coast or whatever.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like we have to do 6 weeks to like recoup everything and then make a paycheck on the way home. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So-
I love that you just laid all that out. I mean, I already know all that, but it's nice to hear someone say it.
Yeah, and again, like it's not about the money, but I'm not trying to do that at this age.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
still do that at this age where I've come home without money
Yeah.
before, obviously,
Yeah.
but I like to try to avoid that
Yeah,
at
sure.
40. You
Yeah,
know what I
yeah.
mean? Like I want to come home with a little bit of money,
Yeah.
and not to say that we would do Tera Melos little mini, stints and be broke or something, but I'm like, oh, dude, this, like, we need to respect this thing that we created more than just treating it as a part-time thing. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And so in my head, it's like, well, maybe down the line when kids are older and I've gotten all my, extra stuff out of my, got that out of the way and John's better and blah, blah, blah. Maybe it will exist at some
Yeah.
point, but for right now, I don't think about
Yeah.
it.
I mean, I'm so happy for John's health. He's such a sweetheart, and I love the band. So the first time I had ever heard or seen you was the Locust played with you in Sacramento.
So you remember that show?
I do,
Yeah.
but I have a question about that because I liked it, and I remember thinking it was great. But I remember all these people like being very critical on you guys because you had. I was told you had a guitar player that just did backflips and didn't actually plug in.
Right.
Is that real? Because I was like, I don't fucking remember that.
No, that was safety second era, right?
Oh, I don't know that.
Yeah.
part. Okay.
Because what year does that record come out?
I don't know that either.
Is that 2000? Okay, wait.
It's like 2004 or 3 or something.
okay. So I'm trying. The reason I'm asking
Oh,
is
'cause of-
because Tera Melos started as a 4-piece with
Yes.
a second guitar
Yes.
player, and I don't remember what year that would have been if he was still playing in the band. I feel like that was.
There was definitely a
There
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
really.
Yeah, and so everyone was like, "There's a guitar player that like isn't plugged in. That's so lame." And I was like, "What the fuck are you guys talking about?" I was like, "I watched the set and I didn't realize that." So I was like, "Oh."
No, okay. Well, the story is when that band was just like an
Yeah.
explosion, and the guitar player Jeff Worms, when we started the band, I was sort of from like this punk world, and Jeff was in like hardcore like thrash bands
Yeah.
or something.
Yeah.
And so when we started playing as an instrumental band, it was just like flying all over the place. He was plugged in, and no one has in Tera Melos has ever performed a backflip.
That's why I was like,
No,
I
it
was
was
like,
just-
"What show are you guys
no,
at?"
I'll set it straight. Yeah, that was just the lore of it. Like, but yeah, it was explosive and like smashing shit over and just being stupid.
Yeah,
you know what I
okay,
mean?
okay.
Like,
That's
but-
so fucking.
but
funny.
yeah, so, but I really, so there were 4 people.
Yeah,
there was a
and-
second guitar player at that
yeah,
time.
it was at the Boardwalk.
the Boardwalk in Orangeville. Yeah.
Orange. Okay, because that stuck with me for a while. I was like, dude, I don't know, and I've always wanted to ask you, but I've never.
No,
thought about
yeah,
it, you know?
no, but there are like, I don't know if you were to like YouTube Tera Melos or something, like, there will be old clips that come up of us being, idiot 23-year-olds, and like, I mean, it's not a backflip. I do remember like doing somersaults.
You did it.
Yeah, I mean,
Oh.
I do remember doing a backward somersault, and and Jeff, like, like I have a photo of him just like smashed upside down up against his amp with it pushed over or
Oh,
something.
yeah,
You know what I mean? But
yeah.
in like 2004, someone probably used the word backflip.
Yeah.
And I mean, that wasn't a sanctioned term.
Uh-huh.
I wasn't trying to tell people we do backflips.
I immediately went to like HR doing a backflip, and I'm like, who the fuck is in that band
Yeah,
doing a
no,
backflip?
no. Like, for the record, no one has ever done a backflip.
And always started out plugged in.
No one was ever not plugged
Yeah.
in that band. But
So
there,
it was just shit talking.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Just shit talking. No, there's, but yeah. Also, we're just like dorky kids.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like trying to figure out what our identity was, and that didn't even happen, I would say, until maybe 4 or 5 years into the band or something. I remember we played one of the most like. I'll give what's the name of this podcast?
Cult and culture.
I'm gonna give Cult and Culture an exclusive right now. I remember in the early days, probably in 2004, 2005, we played up in Nevada City. You ever been in Nevada City?
Yes.
Grass Valley, Nevada City.
Yeah.
I guess east of Sacramento, like where we kind of grew up.
Yeah.
But like this little magical town where some of the Hello guys were from.
Okay.
And
but to us, it's still Sacramento.
Yeah. To them, it's
It's
not.
not, okay.
And me, it's
Yeah.
not. But yeah, let's say Sacramento-ish, but like a little forest outside Sacramento. And we were playing this bar, I think it was Cooper's, and Spencer from Hello was there. And we were like, oh, whoa, Spencer's here. Crazy. Because we were big Hella nerds. And like we opened our set playing like 30 seconds of a Hella song. Playing in quotes because no one else can really play Hella songs. Like Hella plays Hella songs. And then so we like did this little intro thing and then like zapped into the chaotic whatever song we played at the time. And we thought that was really funny. But now I'm like, that is the cringiest, stupidest thing ever. And like I had even heard since, because I'm friends with all those guys now, and they were like, yeah, that was weird when you guys did that. I'm like, no shit, dude.
Yeah.
That's terrible. Why did we think that would be a good idea to do that? So, but anyways, yeah, so that's the early Tera Melos era. And like, yeah, just being dumb kids and not really knowing like what we wanted to do and just seeing all these cool bands. Your band, basically the ones that like were really, really big deals to us at the time was like, you know, in my mind, it's like Fugazi, Dillinger, Locust, and Hella were the ones where we're like, oh, okay, we should kind of do cool stuff somehow
Thanks
too.
for including us in
Yeah. And so I do remember that one of the first like Locust memories I have was like when we walked into the boardwalk, you guys were sound checking, and it was like, whoa, they don't have their masks on. Cool. This is weird, you know? So yeah, but yeah, dorky kids, you know?
The covering thing's funny because when the Locust did a tour with Lightning Bolt and Airborne Radar, the Oops tour, and there was all this like I thought there was like camaraderie about everybody because there was like like Hello was on that tour and stuff.
You said Flying Lutenbachers, right?
Flying Lutenbachers, they were on part of it too.
Yeah.
Like it was the Locust, Lightning Bolt, Airborne Radar, the whole tour, and then 2 regional bands.
Got it.
And, but there was all this like tension between Airborne Radar and Lightning Bolt, and Lightning Bolt kept covering a Airborne Radar song and like pissing them off, and it was meant to fucking piss them off, you know. So it's crazy because I remember we were in like Boise or somewhere not that we were in Boise, and I remember being on the alley and there was no green room, and I remember the Airborne Radar song, whatever it was it stopped, the door flies open, Eric Paul comes out, the door closes, and the same song starts again, and I was like, oh, weird, they're playing without you, and he goes, that's not us. And I was like, oh, because Lightning Bolt was set up on the floor, and so they would just rip into this song, and like there was like so much weird tension, and I was like, oh, that's such a trip, because I thought it'd be really cool if Lightning Bolt was playing a Locust song. We would be really flattered, you know, like kind of like how you thought, like we're doing this because we like these other bands, and so I was like, oh, that's cool, and Eric's like, no, it's not, and I was like, oh, weird, it's not. And then so we were gonna do like start covering people's songs too, but we were waiting until someone fucked with us. We're like, all right, as soon as it's Airborne Radar or Lightning Bolt that covers one of our songs, we're gonna fuck them up, and no one ever did. And maybe because it was too weird or they didn't have enough effects or something, or, but that's a strange perception.
I've heard a lot about that Oops tour era from Jonathan Hischke.
Oh yeah,
he's a good buddy who was doing Lutenbachers at the time.
Yep.
I think, right?
Yeah, he was on that tour.
Yeah. Do you remember what year that was? That's early 2000s, right? I didn't see that tour.
That was like before Plague Soundscapes came out.
Okay, so that's maybe 2000, 2001.
One maybe. Yeah.
I have being a little younger than you guys, I have like a pretty specific perception of that era, which is like, I guess this is how I square it all up in my head too. The early to mid 2000s, there was this explosion of like technical, weird, fast, aggressive music which is sort of like what made us want to, you know, leave our little punk zone and start a weird, technical, fast band, Tera Melos. But do you acknowledge that from that time period of like, whoa, this is happening, people like this stuff, like these shows are big, you know?
But I don't know if people, that's like really interesting, because we were kind of like doing it against like hardcore, because we were like, you know, like, you know, we're like, fuck that. And it was like all macho and shit. And we were like, let's just do weird. And we kind of like went that route.
Right.
But we were also coming from San Diego. We had all these influences. You know, we were like into Crossed Out and like strange, super brutal, weird shit. And so it kind of made more sense. Or like, I mean, if you think about like San Diego stuff, it's like, a good example would be like Crossed Out and Tit Wrench. And if anybody's listening to this, or if you know those bands, it's like brutal, what is known as power violence, and Tit Wrench is like samples and like weird, like sort of what you would assume the Locust it got like pedal-ish stuff from, you know,
Right.
so like weirdo shit. And so we were just kind of like, fuck you guys, and that was it.
Well, and that's rad because you're like, we're just doing this is what we want to do. But from my perspective, and I think, you know, people, we're only 7-8 years difference. And now that means nothing. But 20 years ago,
It
that
meant a
was
lot.
big.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I think from like all the youngsters that were going to those shows, it was so special and like cool and like, oh my God. And there's a lot of people that are going to these from what I remember. I mean, I followed, you know, I was from Sacramento and I remember maybe going to like 4 or 5 of the Locust Dillinger shows, whatever year that was. But I just think for like technical music, that was the time that it was all really like boiling over. And in my head, you know, it was like, okay, I want to do this. And I guess the way I look back on like whatever my quote unquote career as a musician is like, I put all my eggs in that basket. Cause I'm like, whoa, all these guys are doing this. This is going, it's going to go. Yeah. And then like by 2008, it had really like cooled off.
Yeah.
I feel like that's what in my head, that's the time that I guess I kind of cap it off at, you know, like maybe Locust stopped playing like around that time,
Maybe, yeah.
something like that.
yeah.
And you know, like whatever,
It
like,
just always, it never like got easier. It just stayed like kind of like,
That's,
this is
yeah,
hard.
And maybe in my naive head, I was like, ooh, this weird thing is gonna get easier and bigger. You know, like we're gonna be rock stars because
I mean, that's
here
what
it
Brett
goes.
thought with Anti, you know, like with
Right.
that signing us to Anti, he was like, it's going to be the next, he said we were going to be like the next Devo.
Okay,
We
so
weren't.
exact, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so Brett was on that same tip too. So I'm not that crazy for like, ooh, this is gonna be a thing, but
we never did it like, we want to be big.
of
We were
course,
just like,
of
we just want
course.
to do this thing.
You were just
cruising.
not to say that I wanted to be big. I didn't want to be big. I just thought it possible because growing up, seeing these shows like, oh wow, this is getting bigger. This is happening. Cool. Let's all go.
Yeah.
And then, not that it just like, it didn't even burn out. It just sort of like slowed down and it was on to the next thing, which whatever that was. And by 2010, you know, and obviously we all kept going with doing this kind of stuff,
We didn't have a,
you know,
we didn't have a choice. I didn't have a choice.
yeah,
But,
I mean, and like eventually, like I said, I put all my eggs in this one kind of very tiny specific basket, and I didn't think to like start branching out, doing different things for a long time because I'm like, no, it's it can go, it can go, you know, and then back to, you know, like whatever happens within the band, and then what's happening in the world, you know, it just doesn't work out the way that I thought it would work out, but.
You know what's an interesting point though, like the pre-internet was like, and you brought this up, like how you were younger and you would go see these weird bands. For the Locust, we had never played an age restricted show. I mean, we played one that was 18 and up because we had to, and we, you know, like, so it was very inclusive to everybody, and we wanted there to be 12-year-olds and 75-year-olds. We wanted everybody to come, and I think like that got missed a little bit later. With a lot of bands, you know, for the younger generation. Yeah,
that's funny. I remember that maybe reading that in like a interview or something when I was like, you know, 19 or whatever, that you guys didn't do Live Nation shows.
No,
was
that
what
was
it
another Live Nation, but
Yeah.
also age restricted. But
Right.
so the thing is, like when the Locust was like, you know, signed to Epitaph, and everyone's like, you sold out. We were still broke and we still didn't make money, but we did like 2 big tours, the Dillinger one and then this Yeah Yeah Yeahs one. And it was funny because, and this is no disrespect to either of those bands because I really love both of those bands so much, but they come from the industry standards of like doing things practical and like we're here to make money. The Locust is like, well, we're not doing Live Nation, we're not doing age restricted shows, and like fuck most of this shit. And so the agents were like, well, what do you think, how are we going to book a tour? And so we're like, yeah, but we don't do those.
Right.
And so they had to accommodate. Same with Phantomos, same thing. And so it's funny because you you know, like Patton jokingly was like, we don't have morals, you know, and I was like, I mean, because you know, he's just like, we'll do whatever, and I think like, and you know, even like Ben Wyman has said like they just wanted to play like all of the massive, they wanted to do everything, and I was like, that's cool, but we don't want to do everything, and I think that like maybe that goes back to like the Fugazi thing that we were talking about.
Of course,
you know?
it always goes back to Fugazi. Do you think that like we're a little older now, does it still go back to Fugazi for you, or are you like it can't always go back to Fugazi?
I think that
I struggle with that.
Okay,
because I'm like, I want it to, but also, man, I don't know.
Well, it's also your privilege to be able to be like, oh no, I won't play Coachella for $1 million. It's like, you want to fucking pay me $1 million? I'll do whatever. I'll eat dog shit for fucking $1 million. You know, like,
dude, okay. I remember.
Wish I had $1 million and a dog.
I remember. I'm gonna get this context wrong, but there was Greg Saunier from Deerhoof, the drummer from Deerhoof, one of my favorite all-time drummers.
I know.
He had maybe mentioned something about how Deerhoof had gotten offered like a lot of money to have a song in a commercial, and they turned it down.
Yeah.
I'm like, whoa, crazy.
Yeah.
Respect. I would have a song in a McDonald's commercial, straight up.
Yeah.
I'm just telling you.
Yeah.
Like if McDonald's wanted to pay me to have a song in a commercial, I could be okay with that.
Yeah.
A lot of money. I'm talking a lot of money.
Yeah.
You know, not that I'd ever be in a position to have a song in a fucking McDonald's commercial, but I'm just saying that's the struggle.
I want to get to that, but we'll talk about that.
That's where in my head I'm like, damn, like, well,
because you've never had the carrot dangled yet, right?
Right. No, I haven't. Yeah, but I want the carrot dangled in front of my head. You know, I'm like, dude, come on. Like, that would be whatever. But I guess that's what I'm just saying. Like, I think on that a lot. Like, damn, it should always go back to Fugazi. But, like, at this age and at this point in my career, I can't say for certain that it would always go back there.
Like, another, like, adjacent Fugazi-ish band is, like, early Chumbawamba. So they were like, you know, these anarchists, and they were very progressive, and then all of a sudden they like became huge with the song or whatever. But that's fine, whatever. But I remember like reading an interview because they were like all vegan and shit before like people were really into that. And then I remember them talking about how they were touring in a country, and I wish I knew I wish I knew all the story here. But they were touring in this country, and they were with people of whatever the that culture, like they were having a proper meal from that place, and it had like meat or dairy or something, and they realized like we can't not accept this meal. Like they were playing in a country where people don't fucking get to play,
right.
You know, and so they're like, we have to just compromise this, like sort of. I think they were being vegan for political reasons. So they're like, we have to compromise this because this is a part of the cultural thing. They're offering us this thing. This is a big deal, and they like made that compromise, which is. Sounds weird, like translating like vegan something to like millions of dollars for Coachella or McDonald's or something. But you know what I'm saying?
No,
like,
I get it.
They
Yeah,
but the fact is that they like considered it all. I thought was cool. So like, if someone was to say like, here's the carrot for the McDonald's commercial, you're gonna be like you're not in the position to turn it down because you aren't already like. A millionaire, you know, so you're gonna say like, you know what, I'm gonna fucking do that, and I'm gonna go rip even like gnarlier with the money from that.
Well, of course, that's the thing. Like, there's a net positive for the world for me to just have a song in a McDonald's commercial because do the math. All of a sudden, you know, it's a domino effect of like positivity and think. Well, hopefully in that case, you know, like, oh, more art is created and I feel better about my own life. And now I'm a happy person because I don't have to struggle with rent and blah, blah. You know, there's a zillion things that come from that. So I'm not to say I don't understand like the conflict. Like, dude, why would you want a fucking song in a McDonald's commercial?
But the conflict is going to be from your fans saying, fuck you.
Yeah. And, you know, you could keep zooming out. And obviously there are like moral and, you know, ethical
But if it's not your song, they're going to pick some other weirdo's
That's
song,
right,
you know?
Exactly, you know.
Weirdo, like, cool. But you know what I'm saying? They're going to be like, oh, well, let's just get the whatever song that's, like, similar.
And then...
yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
If it's not yours,
if it's not mine, it's someone else. Yeah.
Because I've had friends in, like, getting some shit, and I'm like, fuck, that's weird. But if it wasn't them, it would have been the next one.
It's funny because then, like, even, like, being stuck on the Fugazi thing, I'm like, man, like... who? Okay, because to all of us, we're like, oh, Fugazi are real ones. And, like, how many real ones truly are there. But I'm like, I wonder even how, like, when you're not talking publicly or like in your own head, you know, like, have you ever been to the Discord house?
Yeah.
And you did, and you hung out with Ian and he showed you around, did the whole thing. Like, you get a different perspective on things. We did that on the last Tera Melos tour. Like, you know, John had been in contact with Ian and we stopped by and like hung out, and like being around him and hearing him speak about stuff, it's like, oh, interesting. This is a little different than what I had built this real one up to be in my head. You know what I mean? Like, even about like, I think I asked him, if you don't know, like, you can go to the Discord house and, well, this isn't an invitation to go to the Discord house, but like, you know, if you have an in or whatever, Ian seems happy to like hang out. He's not trying to, as a side note, I feel like old heads are down to talk about stuff. Whereas like, I think something about me is like, growing up, this little like nervous little kid, I didn't want to ask questions or like disturb things. Matter of fact, I saw Zach Hill play in 2000. I never said one word to him until 2007 because I'm like, oh, I don't want to disturb him. I just be cool. You know what I mean? But then like, I feel like people like talking about stuff. So, you know, like when we're hanging out with Ian, I'm like, I'm going to ask him questions that I want to know. And he's like, he was totally stoked to talk about it and answer stuff. Or, you know, like I'm buddies with Eric Avery from Jane's Addiction. And it's like, hey dude, what about this? Or what about this show? And they're so stoked to talk about stuff.
But there's two things. There's like you, the cool dude that plays in cool bands, asking thoughtful questions. Or there's just like some rando kind of fuckhead saying some shit.
Like rando fuckheads aside, you know, if you keep it cool, I feel like people want to talk about their stuff, you know. But I specifically remember asking Ian, like, oh, like, so the $5 show thing, or like shows under $5, like, you know, talk about that or whatever. And he's like, we just thought that was funny. We thought it'd just be like annoying to just be like, no, like to the promoters, no, it has to be under $5. And he's just like giggling about it, you know. And obviously I'm sure there was, you know, like a bigger conversation back in the day about that.
But also nobody is able, like, not everyone's able to be like, this is what we want. Because most promoters would be like, well, go fuck yourself. You're not going on tour.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. So I just liked hearing that, like him just sort of being like, you know, laughing about it. Like, oh, he literally said, we just thought that was funny.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, cool. Right on, dude. You know, like, it wasn't necessarily this like, no, it's so important because
you
the
thought
youth,
it was so depth.
the youth can't afford this and we need to make it all accessible for everyone and like this big philosophy behind it. I'm sure there was. I'm not discounting the fact that there wasn't, but I like the fact that he just like, we thought it was funny.
I mean, I guess it makes sense, like, not to compare the Locust to Fugazi, but when we were like, no, you know, age restricted shows or no Clear Channel, I mean, people were like, we did think it was kind of funny, you know, like it was, but like funny that it was like a hassle for like these like promoter people that didn't give a shit about art in the first place. We're like, that's cool, let's just fuck with them, because we weren't gonna. The reason with the Clear Channel thing was because they were like ejecting artists from venues if you were speaking out against the war in the Gulf Wars, like the Iraq War, and so they're like kicking out, like, I don't know, whoever, like fucking Dixie Chicks or something, you know, like they were like getting thrown out of the venues for like being outspoken about the war.
Well, and you know, even like kind of piecing it together now, well, that's cool because I knew that was the thing that your band, you know, that was, you know, the vibe of the band. No, we're not doing this. And the fact that like I knew about that from being a fan or reading about it or something, that gave awareness to me about it. Like, oh, well, that probably would have been how I learned about like what the difference between, let's say, a Clear Channel Live Nation show was, or going to a local show. Like, I had never even done the math to figure out what the difference would be.
I mean, the DIY thing was a big deal.
Of course.
It still is.
Yeah. But even, let's say, the difference between the Boardwalk show that we played, you know, which is maybe a 400 capacity room or something, versus a bigger thing or whatever. I just had never even thought about what the difference would be between, because there's all Clear Channel shows are not just like Smashing Pumpkins in arenas or whatever. They're like there could be mid-sized shows or whatever. So I'm just saying it brought attention to that idea to me, like, oh wait, corporate bullshit versus like, you know, or even just researching a show and knowing whether or not it's a local promoter or.
I mean, it did affect us monetarily,
Of course.
for sure.
right,
And we even had we were supposed to do a tour with Skinny Puppy, and then their agent was just like, "Oh, fuck this! It's not gonna work." You know.
So that because you guys would have been, let's say you see a tour itinerary and like, no, hey, we can't do this one, can't do this one.
Yeah, and they were like, "There's no way this is gonna work." We're
Right.
like, well, we're not gonna. It was either they have to get have their tour rearranged, or we have to compromise, and like no one's gonna do either because their agent's like, well, we want the money, and we're like, well, we're not fucking compromising, and so then the tour just doesn't happen.
Looking back on that, do you stand by that like hardline? No, can't compromise, or you're like,
Well,
fuck,
Clear
man.
Channel's not Clear Channel anymore, and I played Live Nation shows, so
Right.
it's not the same fight. But I mean, if a moral issue was to be presented, it would still be a moral issue. But let's say like the fucking McDonald's commercial's a great thing. Like if someone's like, "Hey, Locust isn't a band anymore," like, dude, I'll be like, you guys, if they're gonna give us $1 million, I don't know. I mean, I haven't had that conversation with the rest of the Locust, but it is a legitimate question. You know?
It's at least a legitimate
Yeah.
question.
There's also
Yeah.
to me, and I mean, I'm not going to speak for Joey and Bobby, but like, having a Locust song in a McDonald's commercial could just be fully super ironic.
the
like,
funniest
yeah, like, could you imagine just like, here's your burger, or whatever, or chicken nugget.
Yeah, I mean, that's a whole other level.
Okay,
of
but then you take a step down. Like, what if it's in a Tesla? Okay, we're probably gonna be like, no, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, if it has something to do with like Bezos or fucking Musk, like, fuck those people.
Yeah, I mean, you're not wrong.
Yeah,
But also, like, because now if we're talking a Tesla commercial, you might even be talking more money than a McDonald's
I know.
commercial.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I don't know. These are just the things. Basically, the point of this is like, we think about this stuff having come from,
Nothing.
and like growing up doing this a certain way. You know, you just get older and wiser, and you keep zooming out about things, and you're like, well, wait a second. That's kind of the point. Well,
Yeah.
wait a second.
Yeah.
I wouldn't that's not an automatic no. Let me think about this.
But I think
know?
I wonder about this, like Tesla saying like, here's $1 million for your song. You're gonna get $1 million and you can do all this rad shit. Is it gonna sell more Teslas? Absolutely not. Like, they're gonna still sell the same amount of Teslas. It's not like you're helping them sell their shit.
Right.
People aren't gonna buy more burgers at McDonald's because there's a Tera Melos song in it. They're gonna just be like, you got paid, and your fans aren't gonna be like, oh shit, I'm going to McDonald's now. Or
Right.
like, I'm
No,
gonna buy
yeah.
stock in the company. Like,
Yeah.
no one's gonna do that.
Well, that
Or I'm gonna start eating meat.
Whatever it is. Like,
yeah, it kind of almost means nothing. So
Mhm.
then that makes me even right now be like, yeah, then what? Well, what are they even I mean, they need music. They need a fucking thing
because
behind
what the Clear Channel thing was like, oh, you're anti-war. I mean, sorry, you're pro-war. You're anti, whatever. Like the fuck we were standing for. Like, we were against the war in Iraq. We were against the George W. Bush administration, and like us going and bringing all these people to these venues is making Live Nation money. Like, maybe it's not substantial, but like every night the show is well attended and all the people came and they spent all their money. Your song being in a commercial is probably, or our song, whatever, I'm not saying yours, but like a cool song in a commercial is probably not going to sell more cars.
Yeah.
Also, there'll be like, I mean, I've like, there's a Moving Unit song that 31G put out, and we put out the vinyl, but the song got into a car commercial. It sounded cool. It's a good groove. Is rad. They got paid.
They've got paid a lot of money. I'm sure.
pretty sure they did.
Yeah.
It could have been any. I mean, I like moving. I like them. You know what I'm saying? It could have been another.
Yeah,
it could have been another.
sure.
Like, it could have been the Rapture, and people would in the real world would have been like, "Is that moving into the Rapture?" They would just been like, "I'm buying that car," or "I'm not buying that car."
I think I'm just more thoughtful about these types of scenarios at this point. I think that's the point. Where even just like down to, let's just say, zoom out even further, using Amazon Prime or whatever, because that is could be a problem depending on how you're looking at this, because that basically is a car song or a song in a Bezos commercial or something. It's not literally, but you know what I mean. You're still contributing to this thing, and I'm just saying, instead of just like a hardline no, I think on it. I'm thoughtful about this type of stuff. Instead of being like, no, fuck Amazon, I'm not using that. I'm like, well, wait a second. Let me just think on this and like, you know, do some like math in my head about like, well, the pros and cons of this, and I just try to apply that to a lot of things.
I mean, I think that one thing is if you're just a smarter, knowledgeable person, and you're even like contemplating it in your head, then that's the real point. Whatever your decision is, the fact that you even thought about it, because most people are like, "Fuck it, I don't." It's like not even good. It doesn't even get processed. They're just like, blah.
Totally.
Thing, whatever.
I agree. You're right. That if you can just be a human that, you know, gives thought to these types of things, that's, you've already kind of like, you're way ahead of everyone else.
So in my head, I'm already thinking like one step ahead. Like, okay, if the Locust was like, hey, you know, here's a shitload of money to do this Tesla fucking commercial, maybe we could be like, you know what, let's do that. We'll all be able to like, you know, pay our rent or whatever the fuck it is, buy a new car that's not a Tesla, but we'll be able to do the thing. But like, let's say like, in order to like appease our fan base and like some kind of like moral well-being, we could be like, well, we're taking a portion of this and we're gonna do this thing. We're gonna do this sort of like a protest move, I guess. Maybe that's something, and then be public about it.
Totally. Again, going back to like, well, we're just using this, you know, theory of $1 million, you know, to like, you know, use.
Let's do $1 billion, because $1 million's like nothing.
Well, $1 billion for a song, huh?
Yeah. It's funny. It's like, I know $1 million is nothing. Obviously, $1 million is a lot to us.
You could buy a 1-bedroom house in San Diego now with $1 million.
The reason I'm using $1 million is because like my life is just. We were talking earlier about using fucking tape, you know, like we're still, you know, grown men duct taping shit back together or whatever. And I'm like, dude, if you grow up living that life, that's in our like DNA now, you know, but I'm like, you know, my world is so like low overhead and I live a pretty simple life, and like $1 million changes my life drastically. And again, this is a net positive into the world, because even, let's just say, taking that and doing something, a portion of this insane amount of money that you could never even imagine, like, and doing something really special and important with that, and then like, you know, what you end up doing just as an artist and what you put back into the world, money does change that. It makes it a lot easier. You know what I mean? But even having said that, it's like, well, I'm also at peace is a whole other thing, but with like not having a lot of money, I can exist perfectly fine. And I realized that maybe in like the last 5 or 6 years of like, oh wait, this is like kind of corny, but it's like, oh, it is about the journey. You know what I mean? I'm like, it never happened for me. I never like got rich or like got in a famous rock band like maybe I thought I was when I was 13 or 14 or whatever, but I'm like, no, this is actually pretty cool. I'm happy with this. I can afford my rent and I have a dog, and you know, like things are cool. But a lot of money would change that and make this a lot better. You know, I don't want to forget about this, but you were mentioning before we started, and you said it a few minutes ago too, like that you caught heat for quote unquote selling out on the Locust anti thing.
Oh yeah,
that's so crazy to me, because what I was telling you earlier is like,
well, for the listeners, the Anti is a subsidiary of Epitaph, and it is the same record label,
run out of the same office.
I mean, it is the same record label.
I just know that we all thought that was the coolest thing. Never in my head did that like come off as any sort of corny sellout thing. What are they doing? Like, no way. We thought that was really, really cool.
I mean, we did too, but it took a minute to get to that point. But right away, people were like, you're going to write a pop punk record. And we're like, you're going to go fuck yourself, you know?
Well, and like, and then that record is like the gnarliest, craziest, one of my favorites. You know?
I mean, but no one knows you know, like in our heads, we were like going to the meetings and we were like, well, no, we just want to ask you, Brett, we want to make this the most fucked up thing we can possibly do. Are you okay with that? Absolutely. Are you sure? Here's if it was this fucked up, like, I don't even want to say what the shit we were saying, because it was like really fucked up. And he's like, whatever you want. And we're like, this seems like a perfect label.
Yeah. There's no, like whatever a perception would have been of like, oh, those guys are doing this now, blah, blah, blah. No way. That was a cool move.
But that was a weird time, because there was weird major label things happening with a lot of bands.
Right.
And so we're like, Anti or Epitaph is like just underneath that. It's an independent label. It might as well be major. Let's pick that over Warner Brothers or fucking whatever, you know?
I guess that is true. I mean, even though it's not a major label, but it has all the fixins.
Sure.
Of,
I mean, signing to Anti is one thing. If we signed to like Warner, like we're not gonna have a choice if our song is gonna be in a car commercial. They're
Right,
gonna put it
that's
in there,
true.
and you're gonna have to just live with it.
that would have been the most psychotic thing ever for the Locust to actually sign to a real major label.
I mean, that was a time where people were like talking about stuff like that.
Well, I guess also going back to that era was when, whoa, this is going to be big. This is happening. Weird,
yeah,
technical, non-regular music was a thing.
yeah,
You know?
yeah. Let me just pivot here because so I saw you play Disheveled Cuss with what was that with Pinback?
Abelia.
Abelia.
Yeah.
And I was like, first time I saw you that band play live, that project, and I was like fascinated with how, I mean, obviously like we're friends and we're both into like nerdy technical stuff, so I'm just like fixated on like your I mean, I enjoyed the music, but I don't like, I'm not the kind of guy that goes to showing moshes or whatever. I'm like, I'm gonna just watch and see what happens and like get something else than like a normal person. So I'm like watching and I'm like, this is fucking fascinating, all this weird shit you were doing like with sampling through loops and stuff. And then I'm thinking like, how is this motherfucker like done all this weird shit? And like, it is like, man, like you have found this sort of like sweet spot between like weirdo shit and like, creative music. I don't want to say like pop music.
You can say that. You can say
Okay.
that.
But like, it's not like abrasive like Tera Melos. It's like,
Yeah.
you can kind of like go like, oh, this could be in a fucking car commercial and also like at some weirdo thing.
I
rock
think
thing.
I think that checks out in my head. When Tera Melos kind of started slowing down, and we were like, okay, this might not be a thing for a while. Like I said, then I'm like, okay, fuck.
Slowing down as far as like activity, not musically.
Yeah,
Okay.
activity wise. I was like, okay, I got like kind of scared, like, oh no, I this is what my life is. I don't have a plan B. I'm like doing this, and again, I had just, everything was all in on that band. So I was like, oh god, I got to do something else. It's time. And so it's like, all right, I'll try, a quote unquote solo record that I called Disheveled Cuss, and I made a record that was just like not technical, not weird, fuzzy guitars that is going back to pre-discovering let's say like pre 18 years old. So I'm talking like teenager from like 12 to 17, where I'm like into just like Nirvana and like really going back to like just being into rock music and what I love now, which is like rock and pop and the Beach Boys and the Pixies, like my actual favorite stuff that I continue to listen to, not necessarily like grindy technical shit all the time or whatever. So anyways, that was sort of the impetus of Disheveled Cuss. Like, I just want to make fun songs, because I've been writing in the meantime of all that era of playing in Tera Melos and being into weird stuff. I was still like at home writing just normal songs.
Yeah,
quote unquote
but normal songs through your brain filtered through, or like Nirvana or
That's
whatever.
right.
It's still gonna be like,
That's right.
There's some shit on there.
And the first Disheveled Cuss record does have that.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, it gets filtered through my
Your
person.
jacked up like way of doing things.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
it turns into something, a little
Unique.
different.
Yeah.
And so that was the idea of that.
Well, you fucking nailed it. I'll say that.
Thank you. And then so the first record was like sort of like a fuzzy, pop rock songs, maybe like like in the Pixies world or something. And then during COVID, I did like the weirdest, most psychotic thing I could ever do, and I made an acoustic record, which I'm like, what? How would I do that? Like, in the vein of like, I don't know, like Elliott Smith or something. And I wrote all these songs on acoustic guitars, and then I had a bunch of like jazz musicians kind of like fill it out for me. So it kind of created this other weird thing. And like in my head, that was the riskiest, most daring thing I'd done in forever, because I'm not comfortable doing that, but I thought it turned out just as I wanted it to.
But even that didn't turn out Elliott Smith. It turned out like in your lane.
I think so. Yeah. In my lane. That's a good way to put it. Like, I feel like no matter what, like I'm still in my lane, but I'm just kind of bringing more stuff into it, But I'm glad that the Disheveled Cuss thing comes off that way, because I still, it's writing stuff like that is not freaked out shit like Tera Melos or whatever. It's just natural to me. But again, it all goes through that filter or whatever, and then it comes out this certain way. So even like we were literally tonight, I don't know when this will come out, but tonight I'm playing Disheveled Cuss is opening for Pinback at the Casbah 35th anniversary. And like when we were practicing the other day, it's hard being this age and like starting a new band. It's difficult.
Oh yeah.
Because we don't get to like practice 4 or 5 times a week and really, really do this. It's more like, oh fuck, who's around? We'll be able to practice one time before this show, right? Whereas like it's not like it was back in the day, and I really miss that. Like I was saying, the practice schedule, I want to practice a lot and make this a really special thing. Like like no stick clicks in. If we practice this enough, like in fact Rob was like joking, he's like, I was like I was talking about when we were at practice, like, well, I can just do like one stick click in, like scrape this click or whatever. And he's like, how would you do that? You need 2. And I was like, what? You don't need 2. What are you talking about? He's like, you need at least 2 to establish the thing. I was like, no. You don't need that. You could do it. And I was like, fuck 1. We don't need any. We do this enough times. We don't need any. And like, but that requires practice and like the building the language of a band, and that you can't do that now because everyone has lives and jobs and doing stuff. And so when we were practicing for this show, we practiced once. I was like, I just want to try and make this set a little more magical and like thoughtful with transitions or going into it. And that's what made Tera Melos so cool, was like all that time we really put in a lot of thought to like presenting the music in a live thing, as opposed to like click, here's a song and clicking into another song. No, I want this to be a presentation of something that's a little more special. And I think what you're referencing, like seeing the samples and stuff, like I consider that stuff even when putting together these kind of like semi weird pop rock songs. I still want it to have that piece of magic to it, and I miss that about like when we were kids, being like, cool, let's practice 5 times this week and hang out and do stuff. And I don't know, in my world it's a little harder to make that happen.
The clicking thing's really interesting, because I remember my friend Sarah saw us play, and she was like, not kind of from the world of, she doesn't play music and stuff, but she was like, this is like when we toured with the Locust toured with Phantomos, and she was like, I don't know how you did it. Like, how does Gabe know when to come in? And I was like, oh, she's like, were you counting? Was Gabe counting? And I was like, but we had our ways to figure it out,
Totally.
But like, I love the fact that people, that was like, it wasn't like, oh, that song had the greatest groove, or that was the coolest lyric. It was just like, what the fuck? How did you do that?
Absolutely.
And that was really cool.
That was such a cool thing about that band. The silence in between the songs, the silence going into it, and then maybe sometimes
it was peripheral vision, like
well, it's so funny. I was like, we were at Disheveled Cuss practice. I had this like crazy noise thing going on before the song, and like Chris intentionally, there's supposed to be stick clicks, 3 stick clicks, and then a snare pop that I think cuts off the noise sample or something. Like we had designed it the certain way, and Rob was like, he's like looking down and getting ready to play it, and he's like, I can't hear the clicks. I can't hear them. I'm like, you got to be looking, dude. That's the thing. Not to Rob is an incredible. Rob's done his time. With, like, weird shit, obviously. But I'm like, no, this specific thing. It's a visual. Like, you're not going to hear that because I'm noising out like so hard. The stick clicks are almost just an aesthetic. You have to kind of look at this thing. But I do feel like if I take it all the way back, that was probably something I learned from you guys about like literally how to enter a song. Sometimes like Gabe would just like or maybe or just something, but like
that was the thing that came up in rehearsal. Is it 1 click or 2 click, or 1 snare hit or 2? Is it 1 or 2? There's never like I mean, there was 4.
Hell no, barely 4.
There was
yeah.
once. There's once on that 4 because we needed it. We needed a tempo.
Okay, right.
It was like a slow song. You're like, oh, we gotta fucking get this slow shit. But you know, it's funny because we had John Reese on here a few episodes back, and for me, seeing Rocket perform live was always such like out of all of his, I love all the stuff he does. Jehu is my thing. Rocket I love too because I would go see Rocket play, and it would just be like boom, 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 fucking song after song, and it was always a 4 count, and it was very normal. But I was like, it was the presentation, you know. It was like, okay, we're gonna stop here. He's gonna fucking talk some shit, and then they're gonna rip back into like a whole bunch of other ones. That's rude. What's it telling me? Oh, it's telling me that I had to move my car, so I wouldn't get a parking ticket.
And it reset the video.
Okay, just hit it again. Cool. So yeah, it was like there was a 4 count every time, but it was still an impressive performance.
Right. This is all to say to anyone listening, you can get creative with how you enter a song. You don't need the 4, dude.
Yeah,
We're telling you.
Or if you do need the 4, just make it like Rocket and just rip fucking hard.
Yeah. Or there's just ways to do that are not like click, 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 click. You know. But yeah, that's funny. Did Locust? It was only snare hits, at least towards the.
That was Gabe's thing. 1.
Yeah,
but
I can't. I'm trying to like. I guess that's something I associate with that band is
1 snare hit.
Yeah. God. Yeah. Or whatever. You know.
I think John Severson did it too. He might have done like 1 or 2, and they played together.
Daughters.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
They played together in projects and stuff too, and they're very similar. But like I was always a fan of like. Not having you don't have it on the record. There's no I don't want the 4 count on the record. Like I want it to like just happen.
Well, and again, going back to the practice thing, if we play this enough times in the practice spot, we're gonna have it like intrinsically. We're gonna know what the tempo is to go into it. So like a lot of times, Tera Melos, we know nothing. Literally, just like no, we don't need that. Like it can just be coming off of a sample or some noise thing or whatever. But like we don't need to establish the tempo ahead of time because we all know it. We've played it 10,000 times. And, again, I'm like, man, I definitely miss that era of just like practicing that much. Do you practice a lot?
No, I wish I did. But the Locust would have to, and it was cool. And even John Reese was saying like, we just practice every day, or we did practice every day. But you know what's funny? The 4 or no clicks or whatever, the one thing that has come up to me is like, I'm like, you guys, if we have this body of work with 1 click or no clicks, people, the audience may not even realize it's another song. And I'm like, that might be a concern. Same with Planet B too, because there'll be times where like the songs will just kind of go like, we have them in chunks. And I'm like, I'm not sure like, to like a normal person out there, they're probably just like, oh, this is the same piece of
song,
right? Whatever. And so I wonder if like the 4 count is the thing to like let people know, like, hey, I'm changing songs now. Yeah, the Locust for sure. You'd be like, this is another. This is the same thing that you just the same part of the song or whatever.
Well, that's funny because, that EP, Safety Second, it's just like. That's presented in chunks, but it's basically just
10 minutes. We play it in full.
Yeah, and because I remember that it's split up into a couple tracks or a few tracks on the actual EP or on the CD or whatever.
On the CD, it's 1, and on the vinyl, it's 2 because you had to flip the. We could have put it all on one side. I don't know why they wanted to change it, but on the track listing, it's broken down into 4 movements.
That's what it was.
But it is one thing. We've never done like.
But was there track IDs on? There were track IDs on it, wasn't there?
The CD, I think, is just 2. The CD
2.
is 2.
It was 2. Yeah.
Which is just we struggled with that too.
Because it's funny. That was like, whoa, the Locusts have long songs now, but they were. This is all what your idea of what a song is.
Sure.
And, it's a bigger.
It
like,
never
what
repeats
does that even
back
mean?
to the riff.
Yeah.
There's no chorus.
It's
there's
like, okay, this is. I guess you could call this a long song, but like you're saying, like even with Planet B stuff, like we're not really sure. People might not even know that this isn't the same song. Like, what does it even mean?
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Because
it's just art.
It is, and it's like whatever, however you intended it to be presented that way. But like I remember thinking like, whatever. Maybe there was a press release or there was a deal about that EP because it was like, whoa, there's a couple long songs.
Yeah.
But then when you like think about it, you're like, what does it even mean for this to be a song? Because this could be a bunch of little songs, or it could be one long 10-minute thing or whatever.
There is footage of the beginning of that, the Safety Second, as a song being played at Gilman Street, and it's like it's different, and it's just a song, and it was just like its own song.
Yeah.
But the reason, so like before I think we started recording this, we were talking about Death Grips and how like they don't speak to the audience.
Right.
That I'm a big fan of. I wish I could still do that, but the Locust had to do that because we would get. It was like becoming a thing to like heckle the Locust. And we're like, this is not fun for us. Like, because for one, the heckles were about 90% dumb, and we would just have to fuck people up, you know,
right.
Verbally, you know, like we're just going to trash you because you have stupid heckles. And that got really old. So we bridged all the music so no one could speak to us. And that was kind of like why Safety Second happened. That because we hated having to have dialogue with people that were typically just being jerks. And also we got billed to play this a show, and there was like a 50-minute set time, and we're like, oh, so we got Dave Stone to play in the band, and he did these like noise pieces, and it kind of, that's what influenced us to write that. I like not talking to people, and I like that about Death Grips, but the audience looks at it as like, I don't know, it's like isolating, or
it's like an affront to the audience.
When you talk to people, like, because when I sing, I don't want to fucking, if I'm a singer in a band, I don't want to like, I don't really want to like engage, hey guys, like it's good to see you, like, or thanks or whatever. I mean, yes, I want to say thanks, but I feel like the audience should already know that we're thankful, we're fucking psyched, but they want to have dialogue, they want to like have you be personable.
Yeah, more of a personal experience. Yeah,
I get it, but it's art. Like that's why I thought Death Grips was rad. Like fucking, they're ripping. They don't need to talk to me. Like,
yeah, it's funny. I see it both ways, I guess, because I don't want to say shit either. Yeah. I would rather just play and present this as a piece of art that's not being broken up with hi, check out my website or whatever, you know. Yeah. But that's so interesting that's how those sound, quote unquote, soundscapes or whatever, but on that record, which is like one of the most exciting things about that is Joey's just modular fucking weirdness on it. And seeing that live was so weird. But that makes perfect sense where you're like, wow, this would be maybe Dave Stone is, when you guys are doing that version of the band, he's doing stuff in between songs to fill those spaces or whatever.
But it was so nice to go like, oh, we don't have to engage with the audience anymore.
Right.
It was such a pleasure.
I remember, so do you remember do you remember a Sacramento magazine called Rant Magazine? I think you did an interview with them, and maybe that's where I'm like calling some of this information from, whatever, like 2002 or whatever, sometime right around then. But maybe I heard this then, but like I only started seeing Locust play when it was the shushing people era. Yeah. And I think the heckle I don't think I've ever seen you address the crowd verbally in that band. Yeah. And I think that I was right around the time that you maybe, it was like a conscious decision to be like, no, we're just shushing people now.
Because it was rude. It was just saying rude ass shit.
Exactly. Yeah. So I never got to see the actual like fucking with people era, like verbally fucking with them. It was, of course, shushing people is like way radder. Yeah. You know?
There's a lot to it. There's a lot of depth. But it's the talking thing was so fucking weird. The last Locust stuff, we pre-recorded like a weird vocal thing to play. Like, all right, and then it'll be like this voice, and it was always, we did it in different languages and shit. Like, I don't want to talk, you know. But like that's the thing about too, going back to Rocket, which is like kind of the musical opposite, but aesthetic same thing as the Locust, I feel like, because when I would see them play, it'd be like they would rip into the first chunk. It would be like song after song after song. They would stop. He'd have dialogue, fucking rip into the song, and it was like the whole thing was orchestrated. He engaged, but on his own terms. And I've definitely taken a couple notes there, because like even in Def Club, it's like I'm gonna just say, in these parts of the set, I'm gonna talk and I'm gonna say this fucking bullshit, and then we're gonna not let anybody like get too involved. Yeah.
This is interesting for people listening this right now that maybe haven't considered what we think about as artists and like how we want to address the audience. This is a real thing. Like, you know what I mean? That we like, that we're like, man, fuck, I don't want to say anything. Or like, you know, Pixies, like Frank Black doesn't say shit. Like he just like, it's silence. It's just song after song after song or whatever. And in my head, I'm like, oh, I wish you'd say hi, you know, or whatever. But I'm like, respect though. Like, yeah, like, cause we all think about this, or the Death Grips thing. Like they just play fucking, you know, it's 88 minutes of nonstop, like in your face or whatever. And like, it's all intent. Oh, not always, but a lot of the time, if you I guess it's more thoughtful for some bands to, when they like, if you're watching a band and they're not saying anything to you, that's like, they're thinking on that. They're like, man, I don't want to ruin this flow or whatever it is, you know, like, so it's just, it's a little teeny quirk that I guess some bands have where you're like, no, this is like, I know this might not seem like anything to anyone watching this, but to me, this is kind of oddly like a thing. Yeah. I don't like,
or creating a vibe. Like I remember seeing Diamante Glass and it was like, what do you expect her to come out and say? Right. Like I don't want her to say shit to me. I'm like, I feel like I just got like, you know, like some kind of possessed, you know, I don't know. I was like, just let her do her thing. Like,
you know what I used to do? Actually, now I'm remembering this too. We're like talking about talking to the audience. This is such a weird topic, but it's real. I remember at Tera Melos shows, I would talk off mic if I wanted to say thanks or like, you know, whatever, address the crowd. I would like kind of like get off the mic. Maybe even we were doing this as an instrumental band, but it's been a long time. No, it'd be, if I had a mic in front of me, I don't like talking into the mic. I would talk off the mic, even if it's a big, let's say a support tour where we're playing to 1,000 people. Something about that is really cool to me.
Like 40 people will hear you.
And I would like, you know, I'd project my voice and be like, hey, thanks so much. This band's called Tera Melos. We really appreciate blah, blah, blah. But like that was like an intentional thing, because I'm like, oh, this is like a connection. This is part of how I want to present this, of being like, hey, no, I'm being real with you right now. Like I want to connect with you and literally tell you thank you for coming, and I want you to know that I mean that. And so by getting off the mic and like loudly talking to as many people as I can, maybe you would like feel me on that a little more than just
that's
like
really cool.
So that was like an intentional thing. We can't hear you, get on the mic. I'm like, no, I'm trying to like talk to 30 people right now. You know what I mean? So yeah, even that was like a thing.
I always just get my wit up and I'm ready to fuck up anybody. Like, you know, I mean, and I like that kind of shit. Keep you on your toes. There's some people there are some people that are performers, and I'm like, oh yeah, you guys like know how to do it.
Yeah, it's weird. Like I even think about just kind of going back to, well, even just this Death Grips thing of like, someone was asking me the other day about playing to like big audiences. Speaking of like you know, connecting with people, that's a weird thing, because those are the biggest shows I've ever played before. And maybe my dad was asking me or something about like, oh, how's it feel? Like, that's crazy, right? It must be amazing. And I don't know how you feel about playing big shows, but it is incredible. And it's like, whoa, cool. This is everything I dreamed of. But it's very different.
Oh, totally.
Coming from this world of like, okay, even if I'm playing, the way I was explaining it was like, even if I'm playing to a room, like let's say a room of 500 people, I could look out and see, in theory, I could see and make a little visual connection with every single person in this room. And it feels like we're in this together. This is a thing we're experiencing together, you know? And like, if I wanted to, I could address every single one of these people. Whereas once you start going bigger, and once you get to 3,000, 5,000 people, that's a very different experience. Oh yeah. And it's like, okay, there's a front row of people that I can see. I can maybe see a little bit behind there. And so maybe up to like 500 people. And then beyond that, it's just a fucking sea of heads, of just masses. And then I start to feel like I'm just sort of up here doing my thing. I'm not really like necessarily trying to connect like I would to a room of 500 people and make an impact. I'm just almost like a circus, people watching this thing instead of, I mean, when our bands play, it is a circus, right? You know, even to smaller room, 30 people, it's a fucking circus. But it's a circus that we're we're all in this together, and I don't know how to fully articulate it properly.
Because when you're playing a festival or a big venue, that you're how many feet away from the first human? Like you're playing the Casbah tonight, they're in your face, and you can share this energy because there is something,
a shared energy.
Yeah.
And even though the energy in a fucking 5,000 person Live Nation concrete box is insane, and can't even imagine what's going on out there. It's a lot, but it's just so different.
It's not as personable.
It's not personable, and I love it, and I think it's really, really exciting and fun. But I think I prefer playing to 25 engaged people, even versus 3,000 engaged people, because there's just such a disconnect at that level. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Even like the furthest person so far away, like that just sucks. Like just get up here. You know?
And something about just having grinded this way for so long, it's just weird when you magnify it to that level. And then I think of like the Foo Fighters or something, like rock band, the biggest rock bands, or like whatever, Metallica playing that, to Russia, however, 1 million people or something like that. Like, what even is that? Yeah. What are the Foo Fighters having fun? You know what I mean? Yeah. Like what is that? That is like a job. That's just you're going up there doing your job at that point.
And the majority of people are like just looking, and they're like, oh, look at, there's Dave up there playing guitar way up there.
Crazy. I saw Smashing Pumpkins at the Hollywood Bowl last year, and I was in like the nosebleeds. Yeah. And I hadn't like sat that far back in a big crowd like that. I'm like, what even is this? Do they like this? Do I like this? Yeah. This is nothing to me at this point, And I just think about that again from my perspective of playing these bigger rooms that I've never played before, and then thinking about massive rock bands, and I'm like, wow, again, going back to like what I kind of dreamed about as a kid, and then being like, damn, do I want that? Would I want that? I don't know that would be like that interesting or that fun to do. It's crazy, obviously, like playing to big crowds. I mean, dude, obviously we'd all love to do that just to see what that experience is, but I don't know that would be fulfilling. Let's say to be in a massive rock band or something. Yeah.
Financially filling.
That's, I mean, right?
But then if you're, I mean, I don't know how it is to be in Foo Fighters, but like they do their thing, but they're never gonna be able to play the Casbah and feel that again. Like that's just not gonna happen anymore.
I guess okay.
Well, like Rolling Stones played a secret show at Belly Up.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's crazy. They have to like go through this huge thing, and like, I mean, they're just whatever. It probably cost them money to fucking do that.
I'm like so out of the Green Day loop for the last 25 years, but I know that they had like a side band. I think it was called Foxborough Hot Tubs, that they were just playing, that they like, it was like their side garage rock band. This is in like the last decade, to where I think they played Gilman, like they to go back and play. Like they wanted to do that. I'm like, oh, that's cool, because they're acknowledging like, hey, this ain't the same.
Well, Gilman won't let you play if you're on a major.
Right, exactly. So maybe that was like a loophole. Well, I'm sure those guys could probably play if they wanted to.
I don't know.
Well, I think their side band did play Gilman. I think. Yeah. I don't know, but the point.
Oh yeah, but they're not. But that band is not on it. Yeah.
The point being is like, wow, that's interesting that they're probably acknowledging that, like, hey, it would be cool to like go back to quote unquote our roots or whatever, But yeah, it's funny to me again, just like thinking about like acknowledging the journey and just being stoked on this, instead of like, well, what am I trying to accomplish here? Like, fuck, dude, would I even want to be in like this larger than life? Not that I ever consciously wanted that, but you know what I mean? Like, you want your band to get bigger,
sure,
and I guess at some point I'm like, I'm pretty comfortable playing to, 10 people to 500 people. Yeah. You know what I mean? That's not so bad.
Maybe the bigger picture is like, you have a lot of people starting bands because they want to be successful, and then you have a lot of people that don't become successful and maybe are like upset or bitter that they didn't get that success, and where you're like, I'm happy.
Right.
I feel the same way. Like, things
are
could be
you
better.
happy?
I mean, I'm unhappy with things that don't have to do with like monetary stuff, but the struggle, the hustle to like pay the bills sucks. But I'm unhappy with things like our gear sucks, or our van keeps breaking down.
Right.
And like those are the things that like I'm like, this fucking sucks. Like our van broke down again. you
Yeah.
know? But like, am I happy? Yeah. Like I have not compromised. I create art that I think we all love. Like we're not like doing it like, what's the successful formula? Let's do that and like not have it be from our heart. I think when you do it and it's not from your heart, then you're probably gonna be unhappy.
Right. Right.
Like at the end of the day, like, yeah, I would love to have the financial income, but at the end of the day, like I created something that I can say I completely love and I put my entire essence into it. I didn't do it for success or because this is what the industry is looking for.
I agree. And it probably the same thing with me. The things that like, bum me out are logistical things.
Yeah.
Or like, and I think even like I said, the practicing thing, like, oh man, or the van, or like, oh shit, this is expensive or whatever. But yeah, you're right. Other than that, I'm like, actually, I'm good. I'm pretty satisfied with like what my world is. And this is cool. I'm happy about this. And like, great. This works for me.
I'm also aware that like there's a million bands out there. I heard there was 200,000 new songs a day released on Spotify. I don't really listen to Spotify, but 200,000. So you're thinking like that's probably 200,000 bands that like, I don't know, I mean, people care about the stuff we do to an extent, but people could really not give a fuck about what you do.
Well, you need those like perception reality checks every once in a while, because when I'm down on something, I'm like, even I've even thought about like making a Disheveled Cuss record. I have like a record ready to go make. I'm like, I think I'm almost on this thing where I'm like, I'd almost be down to like go make a record and just send it to my friends, just on like a selfish level of being like, man, I don't want to like deal with the disappointment or whatever. And I'm like, I'm kind of into the idea of consciously making a lost record that never gets like a smile or whatever that never gets released. I'm like, that's kind of funny and like dickish, you know what I mean? Like, no, or like, I'm almost like, also the only way to hear my record is to like come in my car and like we go to lunch and I'll show it to you in my car or something. That's how I want to release my record.
Yeah, that's so cool.
But then I'm like,
just get them to buy you lunch, and then you'll have lunches bought for you.
Yeah, exactly. And then I recoup through lunch.
Only 4 people can hear this at a time.
Yeah, but then it's like, oh, reality check. No, there are people. There's some people that really like this, and it's not what I was hoping for. But like, nah, that's good.
Yeah.
Like even if it's a small, relatively speaking, or whatever, if there's 100 people, 1,000 people that like this, well, that's really, really good.
Yeah.
And it could be a lot worse than that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's not bad. Like 1,000 people. If at this point I can count on 1,000 people wanting to hear my record, that's crazy to me.
Yeah.
Like that's still mind blowing, and
people look at that as like only 1,000.
Yeah. Exactly. Especially if we're talking like monthly listeners or whatever, which I don't know about any of that stuff. You could rattle off numbers to me and I don't know.
7.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
I'm like, now if it was 7 people, I'd be like, respect to you 7 people that like this. I think I'm only going to release this to my friends, in my car for lunch or whatever. But
one of those, I think that stopped recording. It did. One of those 7 people could change the world because of your record.
Totally.
And so that makes it like worth it.
I mean, again, like I said, 1,000 people wanting to hear a record is fucking cool. Dude, 7 people wanting to hear a record. That's 7 people that are like, yeah, I fuck with you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm like, hey, that's cool. Right on.
Yeah. All right, let's wrap it because everything's turning off and it's been a minute. But, let's say a shout out. There you go. Okay,
we're wrapping it.
Where's the fucking duct tape when you need it?
Is it still working? Let's just say thanks to those 7 people. Fucking whatever. That's rad.
I'm so down for 7 people. I'm down for 1,000 people. I'm not trying to trash a room of 5,000 people. Don't get me wrong.
Sure.
I'm just like, it's different.
Yeah.
This whole thing that we do. It's a bizarre lifestyle, and it's a crazy adventure, and like, I mean, we're lifers, right?
Mhm.
That's it. This is what we do. So yeah, 7 people, 700 people, whatever. I'm down.
Let's make a deal. If either of us get a McDonald's commercial or a Tesla commercial, let's just hook each other up.
Handshake.
All right.
Thank you guys for having me.
Yeah, I'm psyched, man. Thanks.
Thanks. So there you have it. Episode 38 of the Cult and Culture Podcast. Nick Reinhart. Really hope you enjoyed that one. That one was a really good one. Like I said previously, I love the flow of that conversation. It just took off, and yeah. So we would like to thank everybody. Yeah. Andy, Becky, Earthquaker, Heartwork, Fender, you,
Ruinous Media,
Ruinous, of course. Forgetting a bunch of
Jeff
shit.
Bezos. Oh wait, not Jeff Bezos. Fuck. Anyhow, we'd like to thank you, the listener or viewer, and we hope you check out other podcasts wherever you stream those, and yeah, subscribe, like, and all that stuff. We appreciate you. Thank you very much.
Cult and Culture is proudly sponsored by Earthquaker Devices, Fender, and Heartwork Coffee.
Planet B.